There we go. I'd like to welcome each of you to the Linn-Mar Community School District Board of Directors meeting. We need to determine a quorum, please.
Present.
Here. 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 Here.
We need to adopt the agenda as presented, please.
Make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Britt, second by Melissa. Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. This time we do audience communications. At this time, the presiding officer will call those who signed speak to the microphone in the order they sign up. The board will receive and acknowledge comments, but will not engage in a dialogue with the speaker because of the set agenda of their meeting. The remarks are limited to 3 minutes per speaker and should be shared in a respectful manner. Starting with Jennifer Draper, please, if you'd come up and introduce yourself. And
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Draper. I am a parent in the Linn-Mar School District, a graduate of Linn-Mar High School in 2003, and I have a daughter at Hazel Point this year. I'm here today to ask that you consider including efforts to repeal Senate File 496 in your legislative priorities for the coming year. I deeply respect every parent's right to choose what their child has access to in terms of literature. Policies actually have already existed in the district to ensure that individual families have the ability to limit the access to certain titles that they're uncomfortable with their child having the opportunity to read. This new law is a step in the wrong direction when it comes to freedom and accessibility of literature. The law on the books now requires the removal of titles from school district libraries and infringes on First Amendment rights for a family's freedom to choose the titles and to decide what's appropriate for their child to read. Essentially, this is one more step towards book banning in the state of Iowa. And I challenge you to consider when the people banning books have ever been on the right side of history. So I ask that you consider how Senate File 496 might directly impact student achievement, student and teacher mental health, and parent and family engagement, all of which are identified as topics in the Iowa Association of School Boards legislative priorities. Thank you for your time.
thank you. Terry LeBlanc.
Oh, I was just signing in, sorry.
Okay. We're all good. So that's all we have. So we will move on to the policy committee and from policy number 401. Before we get started, we would like to pull out, I'm sorry, Amy,
It's the board member social media policy. I'm going to quote it wrong. It's 205 points.
okay. Due to the,
205.
we had a number of questions from a few folks today, and we would like to pull that out, and we'll look at it at another time after we get the answer from our attorneys on how to address it. Okay. Any other thoughts, Melissa?
Do you think we'll be able to, can we commit now to just bring that up right away after we get an answer?
Well, we don't have an answer yet.
Okay.
What did you tell me your thoughts?
Oh, no, I was just asking, just to set expectations that we'll address it quickly as opposed to at some point in the far future.
So if you remember when we went back on last Wednesday, Amy sent out the primer and the stuff that we received from the attorneys at that time. So at that time, they highly recommended it. And there's a policy or a law, and I know the law number, and that was listed in there as well. And we would like to get into that law a little bit deeper as well. The policy committee is going to meet again on September the 9th, I believe. And we'll probably talk through it at that time, but we're open to suggestions and thoughts as well.
So are you saying that at the next August board meeting, we will not be ready to discuss it further?
I don't believe so. Unless we hear from the attorney and we get the answers that will help clarify things that we want to talk about. We've had, like I said, we had a couple questions today, and that's all good.
Yeah, we did have a couple of questions from a couple of board members and weren't able to hear back from the attorney right away. So because I've got a couple of questions from board members, if any of the other board members have questions particular to that policy, it would be great to have them in front of her at the same time. So just please let me know.
If you would.
Just for clarity's sake, the policy number is 205.5, board member social media engagement.
Thank you, Katie.
That's what I was hoping for. Thanks.
Any other thoughts?
No.
Rachel's not here. Anybody other comments? A few people commented that they were happy with everything else that we did for the most part.
Yeah, I read through all of those policies, the rest of them, and they look in line with, uh, changes in law and everything like that. My concern with 205.5 is it is a 180 from what I was told for 2 years about the infringement on the First Amendment rights of board members to speak with their constituency. So I'm glad it's being pulled because there is a difference between law and uh, legal rulings. And I read the court case after I got off the phone with you guys today.
Okay.
And that's not what it doesn't say. We can't be on social media. It's not what it says.
Well, it doesn't say, I think, yeah, I appreciate your comments. It doesn't say you quote can't be on social media, but what we're concerned about, and that's what you always look at, is we're concerned about setting ourselves up for something moving forward and just putting things out there that could take happen.
Right, but there is a difference between setting policy and expectation and telling elected officials that they cannot speak, that that's that's a violation of the First Amendment. So there's a difference. And I'm glad you're going to look more into it because as it was written, I would have been a no.
I think what we had talked about within this was that if we were because only the board president is authorized to speak on behalf of the board, if there was something that we wanted to share on behalf of the board, that it would need to go through the board president, and that we would be working with Renee to identify some kind of procedure for being able to distribute that information. So it might be a board of directors social media page where information that anybody wanted to share could be shared out to all of our constituents, because essentially we all have the same constituents, and so we all want to be able to get information out, but we want to make sure that any information that's shared is accurate and factual. And so this would give us the ability to ensure that all of that is being channeled through the board president, and have some control over ensuring that it's any information going out from board members that's being spoken on behalf of the district is being done through the proper channels.
That's not what the policy says, though.
We kind of got into this a few years ago, and we kind of talked about putting a policy together, and we kept talking about doing something. Do I feel this is exactly the best thing to do? I really can't say that right up front. But what I can say is I do think we need to put this in our attorney's hands. But Britt, I do appreciate your comments because it's well taken. Because none of us like to be told what to do. And, we feel like, especially going through the election that we just went through, we were more vocal out there than we've ever been. So. Thank you.
The only other comment I had personally as I went through each one of the policies is that often we leave, the last line will say in policy, procedures will be created and followed through with the superintendent. And it just feels like there's a lot of policies that just end there and it doesn't have links. Now there's some you can tell we've done some work on because it has all the information that follows there. But some of these newer policies, I just feel like we've given a lot of work for the superintendent and her staff without a lot of like by July 1st will we have this, by September 1st will we have this, and what are they and where are they linked, and
How do we know they even happened and what's the follow-up? And that's just me, maybe new to reading all the policies, but typically our policies have been very clear with the next step. And this was the first time I saw a lot of policies that just said the superintendent and staff will dun 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 dun. Dun. I just feel like I don't want to leave them hanging. And then they have to enforce whatever. We've empowered the staff to do the staff job, but then we haven't followed up on do we will we stand behind them on the policies that they have created and stand alongside them. We just kind of went, oh, good luck with that. So that was the first time I'd seen that many policies say and a policy will be created. So just putting or more guidelines will be created. So just that was unique, I think, of this set policies.
No, we'll take note. And this is the first time I served on a policy committee in this last 2 years in my previous 16 years, and I didn't realize how much effort was put into it between Nathan and Jerry and the whole team. There's a lot of hours put into this, and it's hard to compile all that and to try to pull it together. And it's constant tweaking and wording, and the wording is a big deal.
Well, we leave it policies and we approve it and then leave even more work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you to the staff that does that. I just want to make sure we agree with what those things and we don't leave them hanging. Because the end, we kind of like sign off on the last part of it. So.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Rachel's not here, so we don't have a report on July 18th, I don't believe, if anybody got it. But Laura is going to speak on August 8th.
And I don't have anything of note. There might be a new street light coming on 29th by the new park, but that's about as
An actual street light or a crosswalk light?
an actual street light. Which our families live over there.
Sure.
Staff live over there.
Okay, thank you. Amy, superintendent update.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. We are, how many days out? We are 11 days out from welcoming students back, and tomorrow we welcome our new teachers to the district. So we're super excited. Middle of August and next Monday, the 19th, a week from today, we will have an official welcome back for all staff with our district kickoff. So we are gearing up for welcoming back lots of people. We are holding 2 different sessions on the 19th due to our construction over at the high school. We are going to be at Faith Life Lutheran Church and holding a session where we'll have the staff hear a little bit from myself, Barry, Shelley Schroeder, our foundation director, and then they're are going to enjoy Tina Bogren, who is our Marzano consultant, and she's going to speak to staff wellness. So that lined up really well with kind of a new addition in our strategic plan this year, thinking about staff wellness, also legislative priorities that we've had in the past with mental health there. But we'll have 2 sessions. We'll have a K-6 session in the morning, PK-6 session, and then a session for the 7th through 12th grade folks in the afternoon. So we're working on that. In the last month or so, we've finished our onboarding of administrators, although our new administrators, although that effort is always ongoing. Westfield had their playground build. I was able to stop by in one of those 2 days that was happening. So it's wonderful that our children out at Westfield are get to enjoy a new playground. John and I attended a meeting with the city of Marion and Medco. Rotary Luncheon has happened. We've had our leadership team meeting kickoff. That was last Monday. So Mondays have been big for us this as 2 board meetings and the district kickoff and our leadership team meetings. Administrators attended School Administrators of Iowa conference last week, and that's always a great kickstart to the year, gives us a lot of great ideas or things to think about. There's keynote speakers and then breakout sessions, and I want to give a shout out to our Excelsior team of John Christian, Lindsay Starmer, and Mike Shipley. They hosted a session on Thursday entitled Implementing and Maintaining a Data-Driven Tier 2 Model, and it was much of the same presentation that you all saw last year, so you were familiar with that as well. Our facilities projects are, of course, ongoing. Our extension at the high school, the old LRC building, painters are finishing up. That's really down to the wire this week there. Ceiling grids are complete on both levels. Carpet is installed. Fire suppression work is ongoing, and the final punch list reviews have started there. With the new activities center, the steering committee continues to meet. And again, that's a small group. That's John, myself, our high school principal, Dr. Gustafson, the activities directors, and then a couple of folks from OPN. So as they continue to consider the feedback from that larger stakeholder group that we met with last spring, and then from the benchmarking trips, they continue to come back and tweak designs and put in front of us and get reaction. They're going to be continuing to do that, and then they'll work their way to a cost exercise, and I think that's scheduled for October-ish. And then we should be getting back to that larger stakeholder group that met back in March with kind of where we're at in the process, and eventually then come to the board. But we're getting excited to see how that's continuing to evolve over time. The performance venue, the transformers, have been moved to a new location. Backfilling is ongoing. You can see that work if you're driving on 10th Street there. Restroom framing is complete. Um, they've got mechanical, electrical, and plumbing rough-ins are ongoing, both in the wall and ceiling. And then the administration building, the switchboard is installed. So that was the piece of equipment that we were waiting on. It really pushed our entry into that building a little ways off, but we'd known that for several months. So that was not a surprise. But we are glad that the switchboard is in the district and further that it's installed. So that is looking more and more like September 24th might be a true reality for us to be at the new admin building. The painting is complete. In phase one, painting two is still ongoing. Lots of other ongoing work, curtain wall framings, tile, patio, and sidewalk have been poured. West parking lot is poured and was sealed last week. So we're getting excited about that. Some upcoming events today, we hosted an Imagine Learning training for kindergarten through 8th grade administrators and our instructional coaches. Like I mentioned a little bit ago, we have new teacher orientation happening Tuesday and Wednesday. On Thursday, our teachers have an optional professional development day if they choose to sign up for our TQSA offerings. Teacher Workday is this Friday, although our teachers have had the ability to choose any time between August 1st and the 16th to come in and put time in their classrooms. And then next week will really be largely focused on professional development with that district staff kickoff that I mentioned early on. There is another teacher workday situated in there on the 21st. And then we start welcoming students on the 23rd and 26th. And with that, I'd take questions.
Anybody? It's all good. Thank you, Amy.
One question, sorry. Do we expect, are there any major risks that would prevent the move in for the new, what are we calling the new? Admin building? Yeah, the admin building. Any material risks that remain?
You wanna take this one?
I don't believe so, Justin. And I think the good thing that we have if there is a delay, spaces that we're in now are still available. So as far as a risk, the worst thing that could happen is that we would be at Hazel Point and Boulder Peak for a little longer if needed. So, no, I think we're okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Let's move on to unfinished business 501 discussion of 2024-2025 legislative priorities. And I appreciate everybody's comments. And if there's any others tonight, that's perfect. You know, we picked 5, and of those 5, we've got a handful that we're looking at. Some of the things that have been sent to me are mental health, dropout and at risk, local accountability, teacher recruitment, student achievement, and then of course the first one on the list was preschool, and then expanded opportunities for public schools, and then public school funding, you know, school choice, and then of course supplemental state aid, SSA. So as we walk through that, I'll take any comments so we can kind of settle in on what we want. And no, Bill 496 is not on here, and we're not sure where that's going to fit for legislative priorities from the School Board Association.
Thank you, because that's one I would address. I want to respect those who presented tonight and brought again that to our attention. We're very new at this as well, still not sure where that all fits, but to know how big of a conversation that is, I would like more information on that. I would hope that the School Board Association comes with, here's how our guidance through this, because every district has to make a change, and it's something that none of us can prioritize. It just is. So how do we make it the priority for the state as well? So I appreciate that sentence that we're going to wait for them to decide. I hope that we bring it forward and respect the want to have that conversation.
Because the answer to that is it doesn't go into effect until
Right.
August 30th. And we all know a number of things can happen until that point. So that's where we stand.
So I guess I would like to piggyback on Katie's comments that it's not on the list to submit to ISB as a priority, but I think as a board, if it comes up in session, we could commit to saying, we want to have this conversation. This is important to our constituency. They've come and talked to us about this. And so it doesn't have to be an ISB priority for it to be a Linn-Mar priority. And so I would like to say that when it comes up in our conversations, that we make a point of talking about it.
I would 100% agree with both Britt and Katie. And I just want, I'm glad that we are at least acknowledging the news from Friday. And I share your sentiments.
It is what it is at this point.
Last year, under the mental health section, we had added a bullet point um, that said opposing policies with detrimental effects to marginalized populations' mental health. And I think I would encourage us, if we choose the mental health category again, that we leave that bullet in there, even though that's not one of the bullets under the IASB. I think that that policy fits nicely under there because it certainly has a negative impact on the mental health of our children when they don't have access to diverse books. We know the impact that it has on the general population as well as the students that are more directly impacted uh, by the lack of exposure to um, their mirrors. And I think that's just one of the many ways that that additional bullet can allow us some leverage to be able to really speak to that throughout this legislative session.
Yeah. And
I
I
could,
think that mental health piece is also really important when we think about little kiddos that have, well, my family is one mom, and there are kids in my kids' elementary schools that have two moms, and there are kids that have two dads. And they're great families, they're loving families. Some of them are boring families, but they're still families. And that's part of it that I want to make sure that's applicable. It's mental health for them too.
Yeah.
And is part of the same bill.
Their families matter and they need to hear that from us and from the district as a whole.
Somebody else was going to speak down here. Yeah.
I completely agree with the mental health aspect. If that's a priority, we elect to send again. It definitely fits there. Uh, it was brought up at the last meeting, and I've reflected on that and thought about the student achievement being one that we would add potentially. And I'm going to throw my hat in behind that one. But I would also say that, you know, this bill also fits under student achievement because it's impacting curriculum, what we can and can't talk about in health and family dynamics, what we can and can't talk about in terms of books that are accessible to students. And then there are a lot of other bills that have come through that have been whittling away at long held curriculum standards. That I think all of that also fits under student achievement. We want our students to achieve, but we also want the laws to reflect accurate and responsible curriculum so that they're learning what they should be learning.
I'm just going to follow back on a year ago, during the campaign, never heard about the closure of AEAs or the reorganization of AEAs that came out of nowhere. So this new conversation, ongoing but yet refreshed conversation about selection of books and resources, it's come out after publications have been put together. That does not mean we cannot be a voice, and a very large voice at that, of we want a conversation. It's more than we want more than just how to do it. We want to know what our voice is to say we don't agree with it. And I think that, again, Grant Wood, we stand by our Grant Wood. That just kind of happened to us. And here we were stuck saying, how will we do it? I'd like us to say more than just how can we, how will we, it's why are we doing this?
So we're kind of, there are about 4 or 5 that are almost automatic. We have mental health, we have student achievement, we have supplemental state aid. I personally think preschool should be pretty high on the list. And then you talk about local accountability. So that's 5 right there. But then we miss teacher recruitment, we miss other things. So I just want to,
So,
yeah,
if I can here, just for
absolutely.
I've been lobbying for years, right, with my other job, and so a couple things that I pull away from this. First off, just a point of clarification from the last meeting. I think I was misinformed and wasn't fully aware here. So the legislative priorities that we have here, this is not not a prioritized list.
There's no numbers.
There's no numbers.
How they
And
fit on the page.
and even the things that we agree to tonight, we're not prioritizing them to IASB. We're saying here are the 5 things that we feel we should put our weight behind.
We have to submit to ISB. So
Okay.
we are telling 4 of them to ISB, but that doesn't mean that we can't also talk about other things.
Okay. So we're gonna tell ASB, but we're not saying of those 4, this is the most important, followed by we're not ranking them, right? So when I heard from constituents since the last meeting saying, well, this should be ranked number 1 or something like that, and I just need to understand that there's not a ranking.
I think it's important to remember when session happens, aside from, last time where all they talked about was, or not talked about was AEA. Most of the time, there are multiple things happening at the same time. And we're not saying we're only going to focus on this or it's the first thing. These are the top 4 or 5 things that when they come up, we're going to talk about them. When the bills float around and when we have to stay dexterous, I guess. Like, we have to be able to move and know that we're focusing on more than one thing at a time, because that's the reality of the situation. If we only focus on one thing, then other things are going to fall through the cracks.
So then the other thing I'd bring up is I know that the 496 is hot and it's right now, and a few of the others. And what I've learned from working with the legislature over years has been that if they spent all this time passing a law and then defending the law, and if the first thing you do is you come out and say repeal that law, they're gonna that no one's listening. We're talking, but no one's listening. And I understand it's very important to talk, but I also understand that if no one is in the state house is listening, or at least the people who are in power aren't listening, then we've wasted an opportunity to message something that we can actually make movement on.
I think it's important to note that we don't know who's going to be in power, because November, there are a lot of seats open. I'm not saying that it's going to flip, but it's going to be some different people. So I think that it would be premature to say they're not listening, we shouldn't talk about it. I think even if they aren't listening, we should still talk about it.
Agreed. I think that that's the point of lobbying is you don't wait for them to sit down and listen. You make sure your voice is heard. I agree with you, Justin, that there's times that they've spent a lot of time on this. I totally agree on that, but it doesn't mean that we sit now and all we talk about is how to do it. It's that we still disagree with it, and what is our voice going to be in a policy that are we just going to ask all of our I just don't want us to sit here and go, okay, so we can't do anything about this. Let's just sit back and what's the policies, what's the guidelines? It's back to that last sentence, right? And the superintendent will make it work, or something like that. I want to say, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. We haven't done all of our due diligence. Is there got to be something that's left? Because I'm going to hold out for hope.
Well, and that's why that's why
No.
we go to the Hill like we did
Yeah.
this last year. We had more ears, more discussions with people, and that's when you bring this extra stuff up, saying you think there's a chance this is going to come up again. So we need to
Well,
keep it on our quote
it's
hot list.
also,
But, yeah.
it's not unprecedented. We saw it this last session, 2 sessions ago. they passed a bill that got rid of teacher exams for licensure. And then one session later, they put the new exam back in and said, nope, nope, we changed our mind. You have to do this again. So it's not unheard of for them to respond to what they're hearing from constituents once a bill goes into effect and people realize the impact it's having, for them to say, we may have gone too far. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm saying it's worth the conversation because it should happen.
When it's important enough to speak, we need to speak.
Yeah. And I would also say, and like, I get where you're coming from. But in some ways they aren't listening about SSA either, right? Like we could go down several of these. Um, but if you have an item that you're like, oh, this has meat, this has traction, like what would that be?
That's where I've been trying to think of what's the new, right? What's the thing that if don't get me wrong, it's vitally important to state your values, right? And it's not that we stand behind and sit on our thumbs, but if your only message is something that they're not going to respond to, then you wasted an opportunity. So where do we think that we have what are the new things that we think we can maybe make some traction on that will bring some benefit to the school? Or how you brought it up, preschool, I think is a top priority, of something that's new, that's not been acted on, that there's room.
It's not completely new, but it's fairly new, right, in the near past, yeah.
Yeah, it's still it,
Preschool bill made it almost to the last day of session still alive. Like it just barely didn't get passed. Um, but I also think that it's important to remember that these priorities aren't just for the seven of us to go and have conversations. These are supposed to be a reflection of our community so that they can also say, this is what our school board and what our district is saying is important. And then they can also go have those conversations. So if, if those conversations are mirroring each other and aligning, they're a stronger statement of this community's values and list of important things that they should be talking about in Des Moines, that they should be trying to address. I think preschool is, I think we should support preschool because it was so close. And I do think that throwing our weight behind it, if that bill can go through, that would be a huge win for the youngest community members. I think that while I think local accountability is important, I don't think it should be a priority over something like at-risk dropout prevention when we're talking about that's a continued conversation where so many districts, if that was equalized and equitable across the state, we would get twice as much funding as we do for our students that are at most risk for not finding success. And when we talk about mental health, that feeds right into it because at-risk funding can also go towards school counseling. So I think that should definitely be a priority. There is a bill that it's a 5-year plan. If they resurrect the bill, we can throw our support behind that. And then I think student achievement is one we haven't done, which would address, Justin, your thoughts of let's also talk about something new that would address the changes in curriculum coming through, the reduction in resources that we're seeing. That could all be addressed under student achievement, but it would be a new thing to talk about, a new way to talk about things.
I think all things, I appreciate the new and I appreciate things that have been standing. I think that you can always get back to that something new is tagged on to something old. And that's you, because you settled this way with this thing, you're still got this history and this thing that's just suffocating to the rest of the thing. If the state of Iowa continues with people saying no more, and they'll say, I can go north, I can go south or west, that's going to affect everything we're going to talk about because there are no kindergartners to talk about how prepare to be ready for preschool. There are no high schoolers to talk about dropout rate. So at some point, we have to sit here and go, what's the crux of all this? At some point, the voters, our constituents, our families say no more. This is just too much. What's our school board going to do about no more? And so I appreciate the new, but I can get that in there anyway then. I can take that item and say, when you squelched this, it affected this. Because that's what, if you go through their policies, almost all of them, that's where the one-liner comes from. It's one-liner that they tagged on in a bigger topic. If we can at least agree to get a one-liner in there, I would appreciate it.
So at this point, if I'm hearing right, and I'm trying to make notes, and I think Melissa is as well, we have mental health, we have student achievement, we have preschool. Do we have to have SSA in there? Is that still important? Or I'm sure it is.
I think
Is
we
that
lumped
critical?
that into school funding last time
Okay.
in order to have a more comprehensive.
So number 6 and number 7 together.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then, so we've got preschool, at risk, local accountability, student achievement, mental health, school choice, and school funding as ones that have been brought forward. Is there any that we're missing from that list? No, can you
Drop out. At risk.
at risk and drop? So preschool, at risk and dropout, local accountability, student achievement, mental health, school choice, and school funding.
And then, the one that keeps popping up also, teacher recruitment.
Teacher recruitment.
I don't know if that's something we can hang our hat on because that is what it is.
But also the legislature made a big deal about that last year with the funding. So I feel like bringing that up to the legislature this year, they're going to say, we did that last year. So again, it's a missed opportunity to message something. We think
But
that's get traction.
but it's a 1-year program, right? No. Okay, that's what it was.
I
More
agree
broad.
with Justin on that one.
Thank you, Joe.
I think teacher recruitment, they will view it as handled. And at least for the upcoming session, we should focus.
So it gets us down to 7. Is there another one of these 7 that we feel like is a lower priority? Not that any of them are low priority because I think everything's important, but that either fits into another one or that we feel like is not as likely to be a major issue within legislation this year?
I think school choice, unless it drastically changes, they're not going to repeal school choice. And we can talk about the impacts of school choice under school funding.
Yeah, I think if we want change and to reflect what our communities are feeling, we messaging it on the Hill, we need to come with receipts.
Yep.
Right. And our constituents will come with receipts on what they see. So
I read a number of things on expanded opportunities for public schools, and that kind of fits right in there too. That it's more opportunities than what we show. That was in some of our documents as well. And then there was an article this weekend, and I'm sure a number of you saw it in the newspaper. But John Spears, quoted in there that the larger districts are going to be better off than the smaller district. And like back to your recent, I thought about that when you said receipts. The proof will still be in the numbers when we get to that level, right? What kind of support we have and what we.
I think under the private school choice, a lot of the bullets are related to, shall I say, strengthening the the current educational savings accounts system to make it more equitable for. So it's things like making uh, ensuring that the private schools have to adhere to the same reporting requirements on student achievement as public schools and some of those things. So those are the things that they're recommending that they would advocate for under this. So I don't know whether or not those things are like, has anybody heard whether or not any of those things are likely to be coming forward as additional
Even if they are,
policy items?
I guess sometimes we talk about staying in our lane. I'm not saying that private school funding using public taxpayer dollars isn't in our lane, but advocating for the transparency of how a private school operates seems like something way out here when we should be achievement fund, like what are we talking about? And then when that comes up and if we get asked, we might have an opinion, but to like move it up to the top of the list.
I agree. I don't think that helps Timmy in
Stay-
2nd grade.
Stay,
I mean,
stay in our lane.
clearly, I think that we all agree that if everyone's getting public dollars, everyone should be held to the same transparency standards and accountability of how you're using those funds. But do we want to spend our advocacy time talking about that or talking about our students and what they need?
Because that's really out of our control.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
That's our constituents' message. That's not ours.
So that's my thought on school choice. It's not that I don't think it's important. I just don't think it rises to the top of the things that we want to spend our time talking about.
So
Especially if we're communicating then the responsibility to communicate this document that says what our values are, it doesn't belong here. Yeah, agreed. I went back to obviously the resolutions from IASB, and the one thing that they start off with is we believe that literacy is the building block for student achievement and student success. Half of these things we're talking about, the Grant Woods and stuff, all come under here. Preschool comes under here. It's their number one proposed priority is literacy. And so I would just get back to talking about what we do with our libraries and schools and resources and what we are advocating and taking away. It's in their already their resolution.
So I have a question because Katie, the way you described the IASB proposed legislative resolutions, they do have a number one, and these are numbered. So are even though the list we submit, this like
This is not a ranked.
this is so this document
I
isn't
don't.
ranked
I
either.
have never
No.
heard
Nope.
them talk
Okay.
about this being ranked. It's just numbers for reference.
It also helps the conversation. It also helps the conversation back to what I said before. They use that conversation. All of them can be linked together.
just a way for them.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify because I knew our list wasn't ranked, but
So
Back
where-
to the
these are
clarity of
their-
why they're not ranked is because if a bill comes up, you
Yeah.
want to pull on number 4 or you
Yeah.
want to pull on number 2. You don't want to wait around and nothing happened, never even talked about your first one.
I just wanted clarification because
Yeah, well, and the way that this is outlined, so what's numbered is actually the ISB belief statement, and then they're telling you what priorities fit under those belief statements. So it's not that student achievement is the number one priority, it's that it happens to go under their first value statement.
okay. And after that clarification, I wanted to like Katie, I'm with you, like about the libraries and the books and like literacy. Like we can't like if one of our priorities is supporting literacy, that that's opportunity to have the freedom to read. And
Are we talking about the priority for student achievement or the priority for early literacy, or because the literacy
Student achievement.
yeah, number one, that's their belief statement. That's
Yeah.
not a submitted.
The reason I get back to this just as just an observation. I have a family member who teaches in another district down in Florida. It started off taking some books off the shelves. Then it was more books on the shelves. She's a school counselor with no books in her room. And it's something that Justin talked about earlier. That leaves the burden then on that school teacher, that school counselor, who's constantly afraid that they could get in trouble by violating some rules. So, as a school board, we also support and have to and protect not only our right to read, but those who have to provide it, we need to have some backbone behind that. So, again, I said to Barry, I said, I'm actually quite good about all of this, and then just go for it. But given Friday's little moment,
So are we trying to narrow ourselves down? Are we getting down to
We have
4?
to get-
achievement.
I think we need to get rid of at least one more, because we still have preschool, at risk, local accountability, student achievement, mental health, and school funding, which is 6.
I'm go ahead.
And so I guess I won't say a motion yet, but I would suggest that the 4 that we put forward would be student achievement, preschool, mental health, and then I keep forgetting the other ones. Yeah,
SSA.
at risk.
School funding,
Yeah, at risk.
or at risk or school funding.
What were you guys saying? Wasn't at risk?
So I was talking about at-risk dropout prevention.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want to leave school funding entirely off of the list. I know that it's repetitive, but I mean, it's the crux of the budget. So we can talk about the at-risk dropout prevention within school funding. It is a funding mechanism. So if we feel like it doesn't rank to the top 4 anymore, if that bill pops up, I think that as a district, we'll be like, hey, yes.
Sure. I mean, these are
Yes, it fits right in there.
yeah. These are the 4 that we have to the 4 this is the multiple choice test that we have to give to the IASB. So
I'm good with swapping at-risk dropout prevention out if we want to keep mental health. That's fine. Because we could talk about it within the conversation of school funding.
And yes, mental health actually the at-risk piece kind of fits into
Yeah,
that
it fits
too.
into that as well.
It's not listed in there as a bullet, but it will come into the discussion, yeah.
Well, and half the districts don't have skin in the game to get at-risk drop because they already have full funding. So it may not rise to the top. So, I mean, if we want to make specifically the ISB vote count, I'm okay with that as long as we commit to talking about it ourselves when it comes up.
Yeah, I think we have a message that's IASB, and then we have one that's
That's us.
that's fine tuned
We've still got that
for
full
Linn-Mar.
And
We've
local,
got that full.
local
Yeah.
accountability was one of the 6, but that is specifically listed under student achievement as one of the bullets. So I think at least to some extent it can be addressed. At least we've got a mechanism to be able to identify it.
Yeah, because I think anytime a bill comes up that strips local districts and local communities from decision making, we know we're not really in favor of that. So if it fits under something else, then that's good.
So are we thinking that we would take out at-risk dropout and put that under school funding?
I am okay with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're still gonna, that whole list that we have, it's still gonna be
Yep.
addressed.
Yep.
They're not gonna be, they're gonna be under our top 4.
But these are the 4 that we're submitting to IASB
Right.
to vote for their
Yeah.
legislative priorities.
So that they lobby for us, and this is what we're saying. If you have to speak for something, you've got, these are our concerns.
Yes.
And we too will not order them because if one comes up, they want to be able to say, we heard from one of our schools and this
Yeah.
is a priority for them. Da, da, da.
And then would we leave number 5 for ourselves as at-risk dropout?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, that's for us to be able to, when you feel that
I think it's important to have it on our advocacy page simply so that those in our community who want to advocate have information about how that pertains to Linn-Mar. And I know we added some data about that under that bullet point last year that kind of personalized it to us. And I think that's helpful to not just here's bulleted list of priorities, but here's how it impacts Linn-Mar. So yes.
So then that will be wordsmith in our document when we get it all put together, right? Yes.
Yeah, that's on this document, like the red
Yes.
boxes are like add-on information.
Yes.
So are we making a motion
Yeah.
for our IASB or the others?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so is it okay if I make a motion?
Yep.
I make a motion to approve the 2024-2025 legislative priorities for the Iowa Association of School Board as preschool, student achievement, mental health, and school funding.
Second.
Motion by Justin, second by Laura. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Can I add something, or is it too late?
What point of
Can
information?
can we still add that bullet that we had talked about? Is that wasn't part of the motion, but
Doesn't need to be.
does it need to
That'll
be?
Doesn't need to be.
That'll be part of the wordsmithing when they build this
Okay,
document.
that we will submit that to IASB.
Yes.
The document doesn't get submitted to IFB.
This is.
No, but the word, when we are submitting our priorities to IASB, we are making a recommendation to them to add that bullet.
So if we want to
So
do
that then
that,
they can vote on
Yeah.
having that bullet as part of their new,
I'm okay
of
with
the
that.
wording that they are then going to vote on.
Justin would like to amend his.
I will amend my motion to make the 2024 legislative priorities, preschool student achievement, mental health, school funding, and to lobby and to request that the IASB add the bullet about at-risk dropout to school funding.
No,
Right?
no, the
No.
opposing policies with detrimental effects to marginalized populations, mental health, and their mental health. That's the one I was referring to.
The at-risk will be added on there.
If somebody has that in their notes.
It's the bullet that we added last year under mental health, the very last bullet.
Can't you just make it
Gala is online.
We've already voted on Justin's original
Okay.
motion,
Yeah,
so
go
why
ahead.
don't you make a second
make
motion,
another
Melissa, with your bullet?
Okay.
Wait. Some parliamentary procedures. Is there a motion on the table, but we never
No,
voted
we
on it?
finished.
No,
We
We did vote on it.
Yeah, we
the
already
first one, then
voted.
you tried again.
So then I'm gonna make another motion.
Yeah, we've already actually voted, so you
There was no second.
There
No,
was
we
no second,
voted.
so it didn't go any.
First one.
The second one.
He just needs
Well,
to say there was no second for further discussion, therefore.
Barry, that's your job.
Well, we can make a second motion, correct?
Can I motion to add something to our IASB submission?
Is there
Barry?
a motion on the table and seconded?
There was no second. Justin's second motion
Yeah.
is voided. Alyssa, you can now make your motion.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Go ahead and say it again.
Okay, I would like to motion, we're doing the whole thing? For all four or just the one?
Just your addendum.
Okay. I would like to add a bullet under mental health that we will submit to IASB recommending that they add language for a new bullet to oppose policies with detrimental effects to marginalized populations' mental health. And have that as a new bullet under the mental health legislative priority.
Second.
Motion by Melissa, second by Laura to add an amendment. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, now we're getting to the strategic plan report and discussion. Superintendent Portmeyer will report on her goals, short-term goals, and then to discuss the revisions of 24-25.
Thank you, President Buckles. So we are going to start with the strategic plan, the updated progress as of July 2024. As you all are aware, we have 5 goal areas, 5 priorities. I've asked the cabinet members to speak tonight as well. I'm going to take the first priority. The way we've organized the document is within the short-term goals themselves. We've created a nice little box that's shaded in light pink or beige to update the status on those short-term goals from this past school year. So priority 1, which is community engagement, 1.1, we complete annually, just something that we're talking about right now. The Board of Education established 2024 legislative priorities and shared them in an informational flyer, which highlighted the needs of the district. Strategic Goal 1.2, this was completed, also something that will be done annually. The Board of Education and district administrators met with legislators locally and in Des Moines as they participated in meetings offered within the district. We had 2 offerings last year, actually, local legislative forums and the Day on the Hill. And then Strategic Plan Goal 1.3 in progress. Stakeholders were engaged in conversations during school board visits to each attendance center, during Lion Learning sessions hosted by the superintendent, through roughly a dozen physical plant and equipment levy, PEPL, informational meetings hosted by the superintendent and chief financial officer, and through surveys issued to families of enrolled in and enrolled out students. I think if you don't mind, we'll just go to each priority and then we'll take questions afterwards. So Nathan?
Okay, so I've got area 2, which would be our student learning goals. And so what you see in that box that Amy highlighted is an update on 2.1 and 2.3. And I want to explain this a little bit because this can be kind of confusing. Amy and I, when we originally set these goals, used the school performance profile through the Iowa Department of Ed. And so we don't have that published yet from last year's data. So I always get nervous about sharing student achievement data because as soon as we put percentages and numbers to it, it's going to change when the state runs the data because they have a calculation for kids that were with us so many days prior to testing. My numbers include all kids, whether they showed up the day before testing or were with us all year. So you can see the scores there. The first 2 bullets under 2.1 and 2.3 talk about our fast reading and our fast math. So that is from spring of the previous year to spring of this year. Then the next 2 bullets are ISASP reading and math, our Iowa statewide assessment of school student progress. And those are the ones that are comparing 2022 to 2023. So we should have sometime this fall, October, November, once that data is all calculated, a spring of 2024 numbers. Now we'll do more in-depth look at student achievement with all of this later in September, and I'll share with you just our our raw scores of where we're at. So you can see the growth there. And then 2.5 is in progress, and that's looking at our subgroup student achievement. And so we broke that down into two areas. The first 5 bullets are where participation rates improved. And then the last 3 bullets are where some of our participation rates went down. And one of the things that you'll see is just some rewording from Amy about a proposed looking at that goal, because what we found is that when we're intentionally trying to increase one subgroup in one area, it will negatively impact subgroups in another area. So that's why that goal, if that makes sense, when we're looking at, if we want, for example, maybe more free and reduced lunch students in advanced classes, AP classes, well, that may increase, but that means maybe we have less free and reduced lunch students in CTE classes because they're taking advanced classes. We tried to think about that wording, but that covers the student learning progress that we have there for our July update.
You take questions or? Oh, okay.
And then for learner experience, we looked at and provided an update around 3.1, which was around the conditions for learning survey, and that was completed, but that is something we'll continue to do annually. 3.2, that's still in progress. We are still rolling out the Character Strong curriculum across the district. We will continue to roll that further out this year, and implementation is ongoing, and it's a multi-year. Part of that is just where each building is, but it is also when the materials become available to us. And then 3.4 is in progress. We have updated the district website with an updated directory of community resources and is available for students and families. That will continue to be monitored as more resources change and what's available. So in progress.
All right, so you'll see on the short term, our goal progress is on 4.2. In progress, we've started several different initiatives this summer, June, July, right now we're focusing on student support associates. We have several openings. So some of the things we've done are we spent a morning at the aquatic center when all the parents came with their kids for lessons. So that was fun. All the food was gone. I told Amy, in fact, I'm like, you have way too much food. And oh no, we ran out of food. So that was fun. We did a job fair at Indian Creek, got about 25 people from that. We're working with the Catherine McCauley Center with some refugees, trying to see if we can get something worked out on that end. Working with the Cedar Valley Veteran Network. Hopefully, we can maybe get something out of that. We also have done a referral bonus now for student support associates, and we do have a ad running in the theater, which is fun. It actually, Deadpool was out this summer, so I think it's got a lot of views. So that's where we're at there. Operational, we are looking through all of our upbeat survey data, all of our exit survey data, and we're also trying to fit in where does work comp happen the most, to look at turnover and why people are leaving. And then we're looking at pockets of, are more people leaving this area than this area. So we're in the process of digging deep into that. So that's where we're at.
Section 5.1 is completed. The district voters extended the POPA levy for another 10 years through 2035. And then 5.2, beginning the work on a 10-year facility plan currently. I'll leave the last one to Jerry.
5.3 is completed, but it's an ongoing process. As we fit in new employees that come and go, they go into the standard setup for security.
And with that, we'd take questions.
First of all, thank you for all of your hard work and putting all this together. We really appreciate it.
Welcome.
I love seeing all the great progress that's happened just in the first year. That's always really exciting to see. I just have a couple of quick questions for you. First of all, on 3.1 and 3.2, do we have that data yet on the year one improvements or lack thereof for the conditions of learning survey? Is that available yet? Okay. Um, I wonder if that's something that we should include, that we should add into there.
Yeah, our principals looked at that, right, Melissa? I think in June.
Yeah.
And so that came out kind of right before we met with our principals at the end of the year. They have had a chance to review the conditions for learning data. Again, remember that breaks it down into there's 3 different surveys, kind of depending on the age of kids. There's a student, there's staff, and then there's a family and parent one. So we had asked them to look at that as part of our June work with them. And then we will build that into the follow up when they set their goals for this year. We'll have some follow up with that on where were your scores from the year before. And I also have that district data that I can share, in our September update of kind of where we've grown over the last couple of years in the conditions for learning stuff.
So
So we
that
don't
was,
have any like baseline data right now to compare our current scores to.
Yes, we do. We've been doing the conditions for learning for ever since we did the new Iowa assessments.
Yeah.
So maybe minus the COVID year, probably since 2021. So we would have baseline data over those, at least from 21 to 24.
Maybe my question then is, should we add something in here on 3.1 about um, the short-term goal was showing continuous improvement year to year. So should we show the improvement from last year to this year to show the 1 year? So that was one question. Just
I had that same bulleted marked, because the goal wasn't to complete the survey. The goal was to show composite score improvement. So, I would want to see that improvement before I would mark that as complete. But I do remember a conversation about how the scoring is hard to understand if you're not in it. So we couldn't put a number on it. That's why it's continuous improvement. But I would like to see that somehow graphed out for us, or like so that we can actually see it and not just know. Like I know the survey went out because I took it as a parent. But what
Yeah.
does it telling us about
Yeah,
our
we
progress?
can put that together. It's going to be kind of tricky, but we can certainly look at that because it's organized grades 3 through 5, 6 through 12. So it's even though the buildings do get their scores and it tracks the kids, unfortunately our intermediate buildings have to look at 2 different sets of data because the state splits it at 5th and 6th. It doesn't necessarily follow our alignment, but yeah, I could certainly put that together and have a conditions for learning summary.
and then I was suggesting the same thing for 4.2 and 4.3, just if we've got that data yet on the staff retention, if we could add that in there at some point, that would be helpful, just so we've got that benchmark to be able to compare in future years.
And I would be interested in, clearly the personal information would have to be reviewed or taken out, but I would like to know what the exit interviews tell us. Like what can we learn from that?
What are we learning from?
I'm gonna add one more thing, because I'm always asking this, but because I got to see Character Strong in action, and I feel like I'm aware of it. These are public documents, and we put them on our website. If there's links that we could add to that, just for, and I know you've already done so much and deciphered so many things, but that will then send people to the same links you're using and we're using, so we all have the same ones. So that's just I know it's time consuming, but thank you very much for doing that.
That's actually partially already done, Katie. We just took all the live links out. So it's more for formatting for Renee. Once she knows it's like 100% how we want it, then we'll
Put
put
'em
all that
back in.
live. That's fair, right, Renee?
So I have a couple questions on section 2. Our goal for year 1 was a 3% increase, and I know that we were showing progress, and you're going to give us more detail in September. As a district for ISAS, we look like we're on track. For K2, we're not quite at 3% everywhere. I guess when you're looking at goals for next year, which we're going to talk about, does it continue to be 3%, or like, are we confident that we're going to have better progress in year 2 so that it is closer to that 3% and not 1% or 2%? I'm just looking for kind of your thoughts on, we almost made a couple of the goals, but we're a little shy in certain areas. And what are our thoughts on that?
I would say that you're going to see that still show up in the short-term goals, and I would always want to keep it at 3%. I think that's a fair number. I think when I've researched this in the past, even at the state level, we've seen them come out from time to time. And I called the director at the time and said, where that's often, a question we get is how high do we go with this percent? Do we say we're going to have 100%? What's feasible? And their research that they were doing, they were looking at even other countries, they suggested that 3% was a great goal. So I don't want to lessen it saying, oh, I want to make sure that we hit that target. I'd rather keep that target there and strive to meet it.
So, and I agree, 3%. We talked about that last year, why that's the right percentage, and that's it's a growth goal, but it's a doable growth goal. I guess I'm interested in what are we going to do differently this year, try and make sure we meet that goal.
Are you talking about the Iowa assessment stuff?
Yeah, FAST or ISASP, either one.
Yeah.
Like ISASP, it's at 3%, 4%, we're on track. But Kate, FAST
Well, and
was
the
at 2%.
interesting thing about our strategic plan, again, looking at the school performance profile, is that's really comparing 22 to 23, the year before this was implemented. So I am anxious to see that final published for 2024, because obviously that would be more progress with our illustrative math and our K-8 reading curriculums that we've used, and just a cursory overview of scores. It looks like we have some good growth in some areas. Tricky thing is how the state calculates this 311, because they're grouping all students as a percentage. And I can't do that right now other than adding up each grade level and dividing it by the number of grade levels. And I'm not sure that's how the state calculates that. Again, because their calculations include the full academic year. So yes, we'll have some more of that. And I do think the ISAF scores are reflective of some work even prior to the strategic plan. So it'll be good to see what those will do once we've, been through these new curriculums for a year. The FAST stuff, there's some implications for the new legislation around the K2 literacy. And so we're talking about that right now. There's more requirements on us to have communications with parents, put together a plan of interventions. That's always been in place, but the new literacy law certainly pushes us further in that direction. So I'm hoping that has some impact as well.
Well, and I hope you understand, like, I'm not saying you failed. I'm just like, I just want to know, like, what are our next steps? Because we did make good progress, and it's progress that, but I completely understand what you're saying about the performance profile, because I went and played with that website.
Yeah.
And if I wanted to sit there and add all the schools together, I could probably come up with these numbers or something close, but I don't want to do that. I want to just hear from you.
Well, and we took a step last year with building principles on there. Like when they met with you in August or October, I'm sorry, when you had that chance that the building principals came in, like that's the first time we've really gotten to that level. I mean, when we're talking almost 80% of kids, this is a few kids in each grade level that need to move. So that's really changing and starting to become our focus, is like, how can we identify those that are at risk? Because it's when it's almost 80%, that's a good chunk of our kids. We're only talking a small percentage of kids that need to move to proficiency. And so I hope that focus also helps get to what you're saying, is that that'll be our leverage point, is being able to know who those kids are, identify those kids within the building support structure, and develop interventions that'll help those specific individuals improve.
And I'm really looking forward to digging into the data when you have it in September, because in the spring SIAC, we were comparing spring to winter, and I understand winter typically drops a little bit and then we bounce back for spring because it's the end of the year. But there were several buildings that had already well surpassed the 3%, but then there were some that had fallen back 4 or 5%. So freaking me out. So yeah, I'm just really curious about not just our growth as a district, but our individual buildings. How are they doing? Have they grown? Just I look forward to more detailed data come September when you're ready to share that. While I'm talking, my last question is the 5 point area. Um, the 10-year facility plan, we were supposed to get that done in year 1. So do we have,
We have a plan.
like, do we have it's this year's goal, but we're thinking September, or like, what is the timeline on that if we're pushing it to a year 2 goal?
Yep. So with the onboarding of John last year, with the budget situation we found ourselves in Pepple, this got shelved to the back. It just did. And talking with board leadership, we know through that conversation that there was an old facilities advisory board committee. And so we plan on resurrecting that come November. When you have your organizational meeting, we'll reinstitute that. Between now and November, John and Andy are doing some touring of the district. John's putting together a survey for the principals to be able to share things that they can see in their buildings that maybe John and Andy don't see. And I think then once we move to that, work will be done in the meantime. And then once we move to that board committee, we can get more direction with the board committee on, do we want to go out with getting an independent review of the district? You know, do we only want to use what John and Andy are finding? Do we want to, you know, seek out a different firm to do some of that work as well? So this needs to be well thought out. It needs to have, you know, lots of people's voices in it, opinions in it. And so that's our plan right now.
So yes, it's delayed.
Yes.
Good question. I think Laura, Laura
Yeah,
has-
I have a few things, and I'll start from the 1 point section and right through. Um, and one theme that I'm realizing I'm probably going to bring up is, sorry, so short that I can't really see him. Echoes some of the um desire for some numbers, some where we can add them in. For instance, like 1.3, when it talks about board visits to each attendance center, I realize it's each, but I don't think we went to everyone
Yeah, we did.
in that year.
We did.
We did?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
you
And
probably did.
that's
Because
okay.
it came in,
Yes. And I know that's going to change in the upcoming year, which actually I'm probably going to push back against, because that is such a valuable conversation, and going to fewer of those school visits, which we can get to in the what they're going to be section. But even looking at like, well, how many visits were there? And like the surveys, where's there an opportunity to say, you know, the response rate or something like that, right? Because I know surveys is going to be a continuing strategy of outreach. And so looking at, well, how many sends did we have? How many people opened and filled that out? Because I realize people can get like drowned in surveys and not respond. And I don't want to check a box and say we're doing surveys, but then not feel like we're getting good traction on those. That's one. For the 2.0 section, so a lot of numbers in here, and I'm wondering if this is going to be kind of a scorecard consistent every time, like if we're going to have this goal next year. And so when we look at, you know, this section next year compared to what that's going to look like, if we can imagine how easy is it or hard is it going to be to look at them side by side and see where we improved or where we didn't, like however we can standardize some of this, I think would make all of our lives easier come next year, if that's going to be the same goal. And then I understand the difficulty with like how these numbers are calculated. Like Nathan, you were talking about like, well, they calculate it this way or not that way. And I guess I would encourage spending a little more time figuring out how we can articulate that. Maybe it's an asterisk. I don't know, but like, um, just so it's not in this document and confusing, and you don't have to listen to the August 12th board meeting to get that context. So I guess I just would encourage some clarification. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm just complaining about everything. On 3.0, on 3.4, I just wanted to actually just say great, like the updated directory of community resources and both for registration, for enrollment and everything else. Um, I think the Linn-Mar website is a high touch. Like that is one place that besides the classroom probably gets the most, engagement. And so I really appreciate all the efforts to rebuild those pages and make them resourceful. Um, I hope that's been well received because I thought it was fantastic. Um, and the last thing on 4.3, when you were talking about outreach to some of the, like Catherine McCauley and some of those, um, I guess I would hope that there might be an opportunity for some transportation because having like in that workforce development space in a previous life, sometimes transportation to and from like home to work can be kind of the barrier to employing some of those challenge. Oh,
They do provide transportation.
sweet,
Yeah.
sweet. Okay, I just didn't know if like,
Know what you mean though, because we have that issue with a lot of people.
yeah,
Can't
yeah.
get there.
And so if there was like a group from Catherine McCauley, and so since we have buses, I don't know.
Yeah.
But in general, like I would love to applaud your innovative strategies for that. Honestly, that's one reason why I didn't feel like the teacher, like in the legislative priority conversation, I feel like you guys are trying new things and I'm optimistic about the work that you're doing and I'm glad we can give you tools to make that better. So thank you for, all right, I think I'm done. Thank you for listening. Thanks, Laura.
I just had a couple. I really appreciate the revisions to this. This was good. I think you put in some really excellent work and it shows, and I appreciate it. I've got nothing against any of these. I just some thoughts real quick, just on 2.5. Um, if I thought it was the context was important that some colleges aren't requiring the ACT anymore. So I just questioned if that's still a goal that we want to tie to, if we don't have control over the end use of it. Um, if students are using it less because they don't need it less, I don't want that to show that we're not doing a good job.
Yeah, that's a great point. I would say historically the ACT has been a benchmark for high schools just to see the overall health of their secondary curriculum programs. So Justin's exactly right. Less and less colleges are requiring that and fewer students are taking it. So we always kind of look at our end number of how many kids we actually have take the ACT. Um, I would advocate for keeping it, and the reason I say that is because we don't have a test for our senior students. So, ISASP only goes through 11th grade. ECT is one way to see a cumulative measure, at least for some of our upperclassmen. Now, most kids will take it when they're juniors, but some seniors do take it their senior year, or are taking it again. So, plus, we have a long historical average of ACT scores that we can look at, and it kind of helps us, at least how we use it at the high school, um, have an idea of how our upper level courses are doing. So that's why I would just say it'd probably be valuable. But I get what you're saying about fewer students doing it.
I'm going to piggyback off Nathan's comments and say that I wouldn't be surprised if, I mean, I'm already seeing it a shift back to the ACT for some schools. And it is a benchmark for career and college readiness. So when we look at that, not tracking it, I think would not be a great thing. Also, how we talk to our students about the ACT, it's not just for admission. And that's why I think we're going to see this pushback or swing back around to more kids starting to take it again, is because students are losing out on financial aid by not taking the ACT, because even though it's not for admission, scholarships are tied to it. So I think we should stay the course because I think we're going to see the numbers go back up in the next few years. That's
Yeah.
that's my professional uh, knowledge from conversations with colleges and universities.
I'm curious if our intent with using it was to measure the number of kids that were, because we were measuring it for the percentage of kids that were low SES, was our intent with using that to measure the number of low SES students that were college bound? And if If so, do we have anything else measures that?
Yeah, we would have some other measures that are probably better than ACT. Um, ACT changed all their reporting stuff in the last few years. That's made it really hard to like kind of, they used to give us some nice school performance profiles, and now ACT is not doing that. I think the work that our college and career counselor was doing through Kirkwood, and you'll see a contract in there later. Kirkwood's working on refilling that position. He or she, whoever they hire for that position, will have some probably better use of how our underserved and at-risk population is doing with post-secondary readiness. Because there's some local things that we can pull. There's some state reporting from the Department of Ed that we can see who enrolled, where, what group, what subgroup they were in, that type of thing. So yeah, you're probably right. There are probably other better measures. It's kind of hard to see that stuff in ACT.
So I just wonder if maybe we need to be looking at, in addition, maybe we keep it, but then thinking about in addition, is there something that we should be looking at for an additional measure moving forward for tracking? If that's really what we're using to track low SES's participation or career bound, college bound trajectory, what's our other option? If this continues to kind of be a web and flow. Um, I know that the senior meetings are, the percentage of seniors that are meeting with their counselors has significantly increased. And so do we have a data point with those meetings that we could pull from to say how many of them are college bound? Perhaps, I don't know, but just some questions to throw out for thought.
Yeah, I wasn't against it. That's just you all are the experts. So just freedom to measure by what is new as opposed to by historic metrics that might not have the same value as they used to. Nathan, you talked on the long-term goals on 2.5 about how the different percentages on. My thought would just be is for this document here is just to pick one set and just measure against that. I know that you're going to have lots of sets that you're going to measure against internally, but just for the public facing, just to have one set, just to eliminate confusion and make it a little bit easier for everybody.
Justin, one set of what? One set of subgroup, you mean?
Yeah, one set of subgroups because you talked about how you had the Linn-Mar and then the state and the states at the 5-6 and different right. So
Oh, I got you. Yeah.
right. So understanding that we're going to have lots of internal metrics, but I would encourage you not to.
This one does mix low SES and then CTE, but it broadens it to every subgroup category. So maybe we just stick with SES.
Again, what you guys think, but I'm just trying to, once you get too deep into the weeds, then you start to get too deep into the nuances and you lose the picture. So
Yeah, and to just add to that, um, what you were saying about if it goes up in one area, it goes down in another. I think using what Justin is saying, that same thought process to try to make it simpler.
Yeah, we did talk about that. Amy and Mark Hutchison, our high school director of teaching and learning, talked about a way to simplify that a little bit. Because again, you look at all the bullet points on here, there's a lot, and we'll do whatever you want us to do. But if we start looking at conditions of learning, then we have staff responses, family responses, student responses. It's going to become, hey, we're tracking everything, and if we're going to be strategic about it, we really need your input on what is it that's going to be our focus.
Yeah.
Because the idea is this gives us results so that we know how to move forward. If we just are tracking to track,
Right.
that's a waste of your expertise. We want you to find what is it that moves the needle forward for the most amount of students.
Correct.
Back to your 80% and
Yeah.
your percentage of students that are actually in.
Yeah.
Yeah, please don't take some of these like, oh, where's the numbers for this and that as like, please spend more time on reporting. That is absolutely not, at least the takeaway from me. It's just simplify where you can to make your life easier.
Yeah,
I think if I can remember back to the conversation, I mean, we're looking at participation rates. So our goal, if I remember correctly, was we were trying to set a goal around making sure that our marginalized or low SES or, those certain populations that may not always have opportunities that we were tracking, like are they engaged? Are they able to have the same opportunities? If we don't need to look at every type of opportunity, or um, we tried to lump, I mean, the goal was ACT, AP, venture, dual enrollment, internships, like all of that was going to go up by 2.5%. So I just figuring out like what are we actually asking, because I think we should encourage students to take the ACT, but maybe that's not is that the answer to the question we're actually asking, or is that just something that we should be doing over here, but in the strategic plan it's not the answer? I think that's a conversation worth having, is what are we actually trying to answer?
So that we move the needle. I mean, that's the bottom line, to not just to answer, but so that what? So that things can continue to be, so you have action items out of what we say, because that's the whole purpose of the strategic plan, is to now implement. So,
It's like 2.1, 2.3 are easy. We want to see academic progress. We want to see our proficiency levels go up. So, but what's 2.5? Like what are we wanting to see? Or engagement with underserved populations? Like what is the bigger question that led to all of the different tracking points?
Okay.
I have one last, just this, Justin, did you get a chance to finish?
Yeah, I'm good.
I want to thank whoever, this year I went on the registration forms, acted as if I was a new citizen to our community, and I appreciate so much the diversity of the ability to just click a button and everything is in the language for which I may be needing. And I appreciate that, given that this is also a public document, keeping in mind some of the words that are used are hard to necessarily translate. But I read this, and I have to tell you, from being a candidate last year to being a member this year, I was, I mean, like I was a duck out of, I mean, I was trying so hard to understand what the work that you have done made this so much more accessible. It has made the information clear. We understand. I feel like we know where we are going and not just saying good luck, hope it's going well. So I appreciate the depth of information. Also, as a student, if we were non-English speaking individuals, though, being in mind, read some of this stuff out loud. It is hard in a non-English speaking culture how to receive that. And if we say, oh, well, maybe that wasn't our targeted audience, it should be, because that is our community. And we cannot put somebody diverse on the front of this cover and then have information that is not as diverse accessible. And I throw that out there, is sometimes just read the sentence out loud and you will see how convoluted we have made something that's actually quite simpler than the way that we spoke it. And lastly, I again just want to applaud whoever is really mindful of the need to be accessible to all languages, and our many different languages in our district. That has been a monumental test. It may have been an AI thing. I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Now we move forward on the new goals.
Yeah, so if you get into the other document, which would be the updated 2023-28 strategic plan, last month we brought you some suggested short-term goal wording updates, and some of the goal areas were to stay the same, and some we were just kind of turning over completely. So, as Renee worked through the document and she and I met, the red language is the language that the cabinet and I brought to you in July. And then any blue language, I believe, that you see throughout the document would be additions based on things that we heard the board saying in July. So I don't think we'll go goal by goal and read it aloud to you, given that we've kind of been through it once. But were they additions, what you were hoping to see? And if not, what else, what other work do we need to do before this becomes official work for next year, for this year?
I think it looks good. I think if anybody has any comments, feel free to share them.
I'm impressed. I'm sorry. I look at this document and it's clear. I mean, to know that this is the quality and caliber of conversation, of goals to outcome to that, and the honesty for which you have provided responses, and the vulnerability to say, well, maybe we could have done it this way or whatever. It just speaks, I think, well of our senior cabinet, and I think it speaks well to the leadership of our district that we are not only curious, but we're actually reading the information that you provide, but also you're providing us information. So I just want to congratulate everybody who's invested a great deal of time in providing this information.
I have one clarifying question that I've read through this like 4 times, and this is the first time I caught. Um, for lobbying and or advocacy, in 1.1, 1.2, we say coordinating staff awareness of and participation in the legislative process. Should that be district, or are we really wanting to focus exclusively on staff? Or what I'm thinking is, are we wanting to also be um, coordinating awareness of and participating, having parents advocating for legislative issues and our 18-year-old students and the broader population? Or is that not possible because of our restrictions around lobbying, that we really need to be careful? I know we can advocate and we can educate anybody, but are there restrictions around that from the district level around education in any direction for legislative education? I don't think so, but I wanted to clarify before we would make that change.
Certainly, we need our staff to be careful that if they are emailing their legislators, that's opening up the school day on their personal email. So yeah, I mean that. But I do believe that maybe we could pick Britt's brain, because I think Britt was the one that asked about that particular addition there. So can you help us understand?
I don't know how comfortable I am saying that we're coordinating staff participation. Awareness, yes, but I think we have to be very careful that that it doesn't come across as being perceived that we're dictating to staff that they have to advocate in one way or another, because we will never, like, we're never going to tell staff how to advocate or how to vote, or like it's the same with the PEPL message. We educate about PEPL, we don't tell people to vote yes or no.
Yep.
I think setting legislative priorities, yes. Coordinating awareness, absolutely. Staff participation, that we're coordinating how they participate in the advocacy process. For me, that's a step too far. And you know me, I am an advocate. I am willing to get out there and talk to people, but I think saying that we're going to coordinate staff participation is, we're in some gray area there, and I want to be careful how we say that.
Yeah, I think we just picked that up from language that evening. So I think we'll strike staff awareness of and just go from and coordinating participation in the legislative process.
I like the word awareness. I just don't like the word staff participation.
Okay, we'll take out staff.
I mean, that's just me. There are
Staff awareness.
other people here.
In the
Awareness.
legislative process, not staff.
Can we say
awareness
district
and-
awareness?
Stop right there. Yeah.
District awareness of the legislative process.
I like the word district because it includes not just employees, but
Parents,
yes.
students.
Thank
Okay. Thank you. Others?
That was my only thing.
So 1.4 is, it's more encompassing than what 1.4 used to be. But I just want to make sure that it's still incorporating understanding enrollment trends, because that wasn't something that was reported out. I know we have the data. We haven't talked about the data yet. But I would hope that that survey wasn't a one-time thing, that becomes a annual process. When someone comes in and out, we ask them why.
Mm.
So as long as the new 1.4, where we're using data sources, as long as that continues to include those, I'm okay with the change.
Okay. Any others?
So for 1.3, so looking at the status updates, there, that's where it was discussed about the school board visits to each attendance center and, kind of got into weeds there, but I've not seen, like, and this just might be because it's edited down, but I see it under the long-term goals for monthly, quarterly communications gathering with board members. But is the lack of the language in red just because it's somewhere else, or is that not a focus?
I think that gives us freedom to figure out what those opportunities might look like. I mean, do we want to continue to hold Lion learning sessions or building attendance centers? Like, I would imagine next year's report would have some of those same things, but I also think that language gives us the flexibility to broaden our horizons.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you for clarifying.
Well, the long-term goal, when we talked about that, we talked about bringing back our coffee conversations with the community, and that didn't happen last year. Granted, we were busy with other things talking to the community about, but I would agree with Laura that, you know, right now it looks like this year's goal is to continue doing resources and surveys and not so much getting out and talking to people. So I would just,
I would consider the feedback loops being those meetings that a line learning session or a coffee or things like that. Those are the feedback loops. Those are the opportunities for us to have those two-way conversations. So I guess that was how I was interpreting that.
Once again, having the opportunity to fit those in as we feel.
I guess I appreciate the flexibility in the kind of high level wording. And I guess I don't have issue with the wording in this, but just I really look forward to like hearing about some of those innovative things, participating in them. Like it it's something I would like to participate more in. So look, I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Okay.
May I ask, so on 4.3, is that why you chose the speaker that you've chosen for the conversation? Because now that'll show progress within that 4.3.
So 4.3 was actually brought up last time we met, and it just is the perfect segue into the fact that we have Tina Bogren coming. Bogren, I keep saying Tina's name wrong. Bogren,
Hey,
Renee reminds
ching
me.
when you can, right?
But there's also we have the EAP, we
Yeah.
have wellness programs, things like that. So it's not just that, but we'll build that, go from there.
Well done.
Do you think that for 4.3 that you would incorporate anything about portables or just general safety statistics or metrics?
Yeah, we can do that. Um, I get a report every quarter, I believe, from our EAP provider, which is nice. We get that. But yeah, I can see what we can do for participation rates and safety, all that.
Yeah.
But
And that was really, 'cause I brought that up, and that was really, mostly in response to the increased premium that we're
Okay.
paying now because we've got a slightly higher
Yep.
incident rate. So, having a metric to tie to help us get back under that. So,
while we're in the four section, so this year we had a goal to evaluate the HRIS systems, and now we're going to still evaluate where are we at in the evaluation process?
Looking to see who we want to evaluate. So the vendors.
So it's a carryover goal.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
We didn't achieve it last year. We're carrying it forward.
Yep.
Ready to move forward? Okay. Ready for a motion?
Can I have one last question?
No. Yes, you can.
I was going to ask it anyway.
Yeah.
Looking at some of the assessment data and those goals, um, am I correct in saying that our student achievement committee meets twice a year right now? I'm wondering, and I'll play my newbie card on this one. Why why it meets twice a year, and is there any value in looking at that committee meeting more frequently? I realize that would have to come in November, but as far as like looking at some of these numbers and the goals and things like that, um, you know, I'm haven't participated in that committee, obviously, but it feels odd to me that it only meets twice a year. Um, so can you guys?
Yeah, so that's the School Improvement Advisory Committee that you're talking about, that we lovingly call SIAC.
Yes, yeah,
By
thank you.
law, Iowa code requires us to have one meeting a year. So the fact that we have two is more than some districts have. The previous district that I worked for, we had it once a year. Now some districts might have it more. So it's really, what you guys want to see from that. We're not opposed to offering it more, but by Iowa code, we're asked to do it once a year.
Got it.
I think the other thing too, it would be really hard for me to prepare data if we met more than twice a year because we're looking at fall, winter, and spring, or spring to spring, or fall to spring testing. And so, there's not like the state purpose for that committee. And Britt, I think you've been on that, right? Is to look at overarching board goals and help set annual goals. So that would kind of be hard to do on a monthly basis, but we'd just have to look at probably other data, but we might not always have data readily available for that.
So that committee, I was on it my first 2 years, and then I took a little break, and now I'm back on it again. Um, I always struggle with that committee because it's really good information, but doesn't seem like we report out on the data, but nothing. I never really felt like until this last spring. I felt this spring was a really good meeting, and committee members, like we had a form to fill out, and we submitted actual feedback and ideas and next steps, and so I felt really good about that meeting. I would not be opposed to, like, we don't need to meet every month because you're right, there's no data shift month to month, but having a September, this is what our annual data looks like. This is, we got all the big state results, and here's what it looks like, and here's where we're at. Compare year to year, but then meeting sometime in the winter to say this is where we've gone this fall. This is what the fall assessment data look at, and what should we be looking at second semester. I wouldn't mind a third meeting, but I also like those conversations. And sometimes it's hard if you meet in September and then you meet in April. A lot happens in those months, and maybe if we had just had a mid-year conversation about the mid-year data, we could have some good conversation around that and learn a little bit more. So I wouldn't be opposed. Like, clearly it's not a monthly meeting, but I wouldn't mind a third meeting in the middle of the year.
Or if there's not data that like these specific data points, like thinking back to the special education implementation plan, where there's some metrics there that might fall under that umbrella, that we could kind of just at least check in on.
You
Uh,
know, just
oh,
an idea.
I don't know.
We talk a lot about um, grade level versus cohort. I mean, September is going to be grade level. It's going to be year to year how each grade did. Winter could be cohort. Like, how are specific students doing, and have that committee have that conversation, because that's something the board has been asking more and more to do, is look at those core cohorts in addition to grade level. So, I mean, it could just be, instead of like, we wouldn't want to ask people to spend, I think right now it's like an hour to an hour and a half meeting. You add 1 hour in the middle of the year, but you look at a completely different set of data. Like, now we're going to look at cohorts right now and have that conversation. It wouldn't be new data. It would just be looking at a different set of data, like a different way to look at the same data. That, I think, actually would be helpful as well.
So I just brought that up within the context of the section 2 and those goals. I don't know if that is the right place necessarily, or if we just table that for the organizational meeting.
I think it'll probably have to be done at the organizational meeting in terms of like formalizing it, but doesn't mean you guys can't have another meeting in the meantime.
We're not necessarily here to make more work for Nathan. We want to make sure it's valuable.
Thank you.
I'm not anyway, Nathan.
I will motion to approve. No, sorry, wrong thing that I'm motioning to approve of.
Motion to approve the changes
Yeah,
to the updated strategic plan as discussed.
With the one revision.
Yeah, with the one revision in it.
It says as discussed, so we discussed the revision.
Okay.
Second.
Britt, Melissa, Any other questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to approve the first reading of policy recommendations as presented in 601.1 with the removal of 205.5.
Second.
Motion by Melissa, second by Justin. Any questions, comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Fundraising request?
Motion to approve the fundraising request as presented in exhibit 602.1.
Second.
Motion by Laura, second by Britt. Questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to approve open enrollment requests as presented.
Second.
Motion by Britt, second by Melissa.
Question. Have we had all three categories before? And I just didn't see it. I mean, I've always seen two categories. Now there's
Denied out is a new one.
Yeah, can we have some context for that section?
Yeah, great. We need to ask that. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, with the new changes in open enrollment, the district, oh, now I'm having a blank on how to say this. If the students are with us, so if their resident district is with us, they have to have a good cause according to Iowa law, and that's very prescriptive about what meets good cause. And so therefore, if we get a recommendation or if we get an open enrollment application, my recommendation is to deny out if it does not meet good cause. There's a lot of things without getting into specifics of kids and plans, but that's why you're seeing the three categories. We didn't have to do that before because there wasn't a deadline. And now with the deadline being reinstated through the open enrollment law change, we have to have these three categories.
So like Nathan said, this isn't super foreign to us that have been working for school districts a while. Not having that enrollment deadline of March 1st we've only been operating that way for what, maybe 3 years now?
Yeah.
So it's back to March 1. If you don't have it in time, you have to have a good cause exception to qualify. So
And just to clarify, just doubly, triply clarify, the phrase
Oh, I like that. That's what I was going to say too.
the phrase "no good cause" is legalese.
it's legalese, and there's a bunch of definitions of those qualifications that you would need to have to meet good
All
cause.
spelled out.
Okay.
And that is in there's
Yeah. Do you want me to share those? I mean, they're in there. So when we say good cause, like I'm not making that term up. Amy's right. That's in the open enrollment legal handbook through the Iowa Department of Education. And there's a list of 9 or 10 things that would meet those definitions.
I just thought it was important that for anybody
Right.
reading this, listening to us to discuss it, like that's not a casual reference to, oh, no good cause. That's a very specific.
It's exactly my same question. And we're going to do that every time we see that.
Okay, so good questions, good comments. Thank you. Britt made the motion. Melissa seconded it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to approve Carly Christensen as the 2024-25 MIIP representative and Laura Pearson as the alternate.
Second.
Second by first motion by Melissa, second by Laura. Questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Repeat it.
And Jonathan would like to talk about 605 before we vote.
Yes, thanks, President Buckles. So with our increase in our insurance premiums and then the early separation payments that are funded through the management fund, we've created a little bit of a cash flow issue. So with that, we have enough funds levied. The majority of that revenue comes in October and April with our tax payments. The majority of our expenses, on the other hand, come out at the first of the year. So once we get to October, we will be able to repay this interfund loan back to the general fund for that $700,000 premium, and then plus the going interest rate at our local bank.
So it's strictly a timing issue.
Strictly a timing issue.
It's happened before.
Yep.
Yeah.
Motion to transfer $700,000 from the general fund to the management fund to cover insurance premium payments and early separation payments.
Second.
Motion by Britt, second by Katie. Melissa, sorry. Katie on the stick, Katie. Any other questions?
Just that, this comes back to the complicated school funding. And somebody casually hearing this might say, oh, well, they're not managing their funds right. Couldn't be further from the truth. It's the way that the funding works and understanding when you're in a government system and you know when you're getting money, certain amounts of money, certain times of the year. It's not like you get paid every other week. We're getting money once a month or 1 month out of the year or something like that. So I just want to make sure that those listening in the audio playback understand that these are normal things that happen. And this is why we have the flexibility to be able to do that.
Well, and it's important, I think, it's a loan. It will be repaid. We're not moving buckets. Like, it'll be put back in October. So I think that's also important.
So when you said cash flow issue, it's not per se an actual issue. It's just a temporary move, and it's not that it wasn't predicted or it came out of nowhere. This is yeah.
I think Britt said it well, and it's a timing issue of when our revenues are coming in versus when our expenses are going out.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying, everyone.
Okay, motion by Britt, second by Melissa. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Katie, second by Laura. More questions? Just real quick, there is a retirement in there, so we want to thank that person for his service.
My question, 11 days out, is how many more open, like, are we looking good? Do we have a lot of open positions still to fill, or?
We are better with teachers than we are student sport associates.
Do you have a feel for how many of the positions that we had to not furlough, reduce, we were able to bring back for this coming year?
I think we're at 4 or 5.
Okay.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion by Katie, second by Laura. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Go to the board calendar and communications. Couple items. Tomorrow is the new teacher luncheon, and I was scheduled to be there, but I have to opt out. So just send that across if anybody can go.
I'll be there.
Good. Cool.
I will too.
Good.
I was
Cool.
scheduled to be there as well and have
It's a nice session.
to another meeting.
Look forward to seeing you all on the 19th. Laura's doing the next council meeting. At the next board meeting, just to point out, we will have a work session that evening, and it'll be due to staffing goals and that kind of stuff. So that will be a special work session that night. I'm sorry.
Closed session for my evaluation.
That's what I meant to say. Oh, my apologies. Thank you. Closed session.
August 26th?
On the 26th after the regular meeting. Yeah. Maury, we have a board visit coming up on the 12th of September. Marion City Council on the 19th of September. Anybody can do that? I don't.
I'll do it.
You like doing that? Good. I like your reports too.
Thank you.
Just a real quick personal comment about communications. Shared this with a number of cabinet people, but for me personally, I've made a decision to retire from my business. So I sold my business. So in early September, I'll be totally retired. And I suppose spending more time here, my wife would say.
Smile.
All right.
That's very.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We're getting there. 68 years old, I thought it was time. So.
They need bus drivers.
That's exactly what my wife said. She said, you should drive a bus. I said, no, wait a minute here. When you retired, no, just kidding. Any other good for the board? Any other comments?
Yeah, the last meeting, we talked about our board visits, and With our strategic plan, one of our priorities is engagement. And I am just going to say that I am not in favor of the reduced schedule of board visits to buildings. I think it's a really important uh, part of our position to be seen in our buildings, to engage and talk with staff and students. I also would like to, talk about the fact that one comment that was made at the last meeting after that was announced was, well, then why are we going right back to the one we were just at? So I understand that it's during the day and it can be hard to be there. And that's why we have the flexibility to say, come if you can. But it's not that I like going, I do. It's that I feel it's necessity to our position to see each building every year, not to see each building once every 2 years. So I would like that revisited. I don't know what other people's comments or thoughts are on that, but
And I will jump in since you quoted me from the last session about observing that we just went to Excelsior. And in the theme of innovative new ideas, maybe this doesn't look like a typical board visit like we have in the past. But I think really the end goal, what we're looking for, is more opportunities to have a sit down conversation with building staff. And that could look like a number of things. Um, because it's just, besides, these meetings, if someone takes the initiative to reach out to us, we have these windows prescribed to us for those conversations. And I would also like more of those. And again, it could look like lots of things. Because I completely appreciate the difficulty in scheduling. These are during the school day. Like, so maybe it's not, I'm open to new ideas that are less disruptive, less difficult to schedule. But yes, please give us more opportunities to talk to the other district professionals and students.
My my opinion, my thoughts are, and I actually am the one that told Amy we should do it every other year because I feel in all the years that I've been on this board that it puts a lot of pressure on the leadership of each building. It puts a lot of pressure on the staff and really what's their role? Their role is to teach the kids. Their normal day is pretty hectic anyway. And with that said, and that puts pressure on us. I mean, we all have commitments, but especially if they put a lot of work together and only 3 or 4 of us show up, I think that makes it a real challenge for them. And that's just my thoughts. I feel we should move forward at what we had planned. And I know a lot of the principals are actually happy with that because once again, it puts a lot of pressure on them to feel like they have to prepare something. So that's my thoughts.
I would um agree with the fact that when not as many people can come, it feels harder for us to feel like we're asking so much out of these school staff to put the work into having something like this, and then only half of us can show up. And I personally, as somebody who works on the other side of town, it's really hard for me to make it to 16 different visits during a 9-month period of time. And so I can't make it to every one of them during the year. And so when we have half as many, it's easier for me to prioritize them and to make it to half. And I feel like on the years when we were doing half, um, because prior to COVID, we were doing half of the buildings every year. Is that correct?
Correct.
Um, and I think for many years that seemed to be a flow that worked really well. Was my perception from what I had heard. I wasn't on the board at the time, but that was what I had heard from people. And so to me, this doesn't feel like it's a reducing. It feels like we're going back to what the normal is. Um, and we still have the opportunity to interact with staff and to hear from administrators and staff and have the opportunities when people want to talk with us, but without asking more of them. So I guess I would lean more toward keeping it at the every other with maybe a maybe a once a year, anybody that wants to come from the district and we're all there, and maybe we're all there with an open ear or something, and anybody can come talk to us.
So I appreciate all the comments.
Well, what do Justin and Katie think?
Well, I was just going to butt in. I'm sorry. As a newcomer, I want to know what we're going to do, not what worked in the past. It's a new world. We keep saying that. I appreciated that incredible opportunity. What other ways are we meeting this goal without having to have a set aside time? And I don't know what that looks like, but I'm willing to say we met it by being on the tennis court. I don't know what we were someplace else. We met that integral moment where it was casual. We were conversation. We were having a learning opportunity. And I know it sounds simple, check. We actually did something but we didn't do it the way we've always done it. So therefore it didn't look like we did it. As a newcomer, I have to tell you, if I hadn't had that series, and I didn't know they weren't mandatory, so I went to all of them. I think if that had not been the case, I would not be as comfortable making decisions right now as a newcomer this past year as I am now. I don't know if I want to wait 2 years to finally get to a building that just got a playground. I know what it meant to Westfield to get that playground because I was at that visit. And so I don't want to I'd wait another year. Now I can go into any building, and I think that again becomes innovative. How are ways that we can not disrupt what's going on, but come in and get a feel for that building and be able to talk about that building? And we've done it in some other ways, reading days and things like that. Again, check. We were actually in that building as board members with a conversation both ways, not in the way that we were doing it. It's now a new world. How are we going to do it? Maybe look different than how we've done it. So I'm just throwing that up.
President Buckholz, can I interject? It's just me, Melissa. There are other subgroups that maybe you haven't seen or had an opportunity in a board visit that might be something if Katie's talking about a whole new world. I will tell you, our preschool teachers would love to see you, or our ELL teachers. So I'm just, if you want to think differently, maybe it's not a visit to every building, maybe it's also think of some of the other subgroups that maybe aren't showcased in a board visit to think about rotating into that. Compass and Atlas, please. Yep, please.
That is a great idea.
Can we
Justin.
Yeah, Melissa, I love that idea. Just thinking off the top of my head, the staff day, right? Where maybe we can go there and, it's great to see the kids. And I love to see the kids. And I've heard from kids who their parents said, yeah, they saw you at the school board. And I know it's important to go to the schools for one reason is to just show support to the staff that are there. Whether that needs to happen every year or every other year, it's a debate. Concept to just kind of be in there. I like that. I also wonder if it's on us as a board though, to figure out play ways that we can get in, and if it needs to be all as a board or if it's some smaller group, just to show up before a band concert and just to greet parents as they're walking into a building for a band concert
Or before a basketball game.
Right, there are other ways that we can just kind of think about it. So
I would do a recess shift. I like
yeah.
Yeah, it might be helpful to just, if we could get a list of like the school's special events at each district and like what time is preschool drop off and pick up and different things like that that maybe we could engage with, so that we could fit it into our schedules and fit it into ways that make sense, and we could show up to things that might be fun and different for the families to see us be part of, or that might be interesting for us to see that we wouldn't typically see in a visit. Thanks. And we wouldn't all have to be there.
appreciate the comments? Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate it. It is 7:03.
Motion to dismiss, adjourn. 7:03.
second.
Motion by Melissa, second by Laura. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Good meeting. Thank you, guys.